What if I told you that every manifestation technique you've ever tried has been missing one crucial ingredient? And no, I'm not talking about visualizing harder or affirming louder. I'm talking about the foundational assumption that sits underneath everything else. The one that decides whether your techniques actually work or just keep you spinning your wheels. I spent years practicing Neville Goddard's teachings, getting some results here and there, but nothing life-changing. Until I discovered this one assumption. And when I finally got it, everything shifted. My bank account, my relationships, my entire reality reorganized itself. Stick with me because somewhere in this video, I'm going to share the exact moment I realized I've been fooling myself for years. And that story alone might trigger the same shift in you that it did in me. Hey, I'm Ben Harris, and for the past several years, I've been deep in the world of manifestation in Neville Goddard's teachings. Not just reading about them, but actually testing them in my own life when things looked like they were falling apart. And here's what I've noticed over and over again. People know all the techniques. They know SATs, they know living in the end, they know revision. They can quote Neville's lectures word for word, but they're still stuck, still waiting, still staring at the 3D world wondering, why does this work for everyone else, but not for me? I was exactly the same way until I stumbled on something Neville said in one of his lesser known lectures. It was literally one sentence, and it stopped me cold. It didn't click right away. It sat in the back of my mind like a splinter. Until one night, everything just made sense. By the end of this video, you're going to see your entire relationship with manifestation differently. I promise you that. So what is this one assumption? The one Neville kept pointing to over and over. The one that quietly sits under every lecture, every story, every success. It's this: consciousness is the only reality. Now your mind might immediately go, yeah, I've heard that. That's basic Neville. I already know that. And if that's you, I'm going to challenge you right now. If you really truly assumed that consciousness is the only reality, your 3D would not scare you the way it does. Those messages from your SP wouldn't shake you. Your bank account wouldn't dictate your nervous system. And your past wouldn't still feel like a prison. So clearly there's a gap between I've heard this and I'm actually living from this. Let me tell you a story that will show you exactly what I mean. About 2 years ago, I was in a really difficult financial situation. I'd been affirming abundance, visualizing money flowing to me, doing SATs every night, doing all the right things. I saw little improvements here and there, some random checks, a bit of relief, but nothing major, nothing that matched the effort I was putting in. I was still stressed about bills, still opening my banking app with that tight feeling in my chest, still getting that pit in my stomach every time an unexpected expense came up. One night I was rereading Neville's lecture, Consciousness is the Only Reality. And notice, he literally put the answer in the title. He said something that hit me completely differently this time. The world is yourself pushed out. Consciousness is the one and only reality. This is not a theory to be believed. This is a fact to be experienced. And in that moment, it hit me like a slap. I didn't actually believe consciousness was the only reality. Not really. I believed my bank account was real. I believed the bills were real. I believed the economy was real. I believed that other people's opinions of me were real. I believed my past was real and fixed and heavy. I was giving all these external things the status of real, and then trying to use my consciousness to change them. Like consciousness was a tool I picked up to fight this big solid 3D monster outside of me. But that's completely backwards. When you truly assume that consciousness is the only reality, you realize something that once it lands, you can never unsee. The 3D world, everything you see and touch and experience, is not the cause of anything. It's the effect. It's the shadow that consciousness casts. It's the after image, the echo. And this changes everything because you stop trying to wrestle with shadows and you start going straight to the light that's casting them. You stop trying to manipulate the outer world and you start creating from the inside out. Think about it. If consciousness is the only reality, what is there left to doubt? You're not sitting there going, will this work? Because there is no this in that anymore. There's not me here trying to push my wish out there into the world. There's just consciousness. And what you're conscious of being has to outpicture. The 3D circumstances stop being this terrifying judge of whether you're on track or not, because you know they're just an old projection, like watching a movie you filmed months ago. Let me break down why this assumption is so foundational. First, it eliminates doubt. When I was stressed about money, I was staring at my bank account as if it was a sacred tablet of truth. I was assuming it was real, fixed, powerful, that it had authority over how I felt, what I could do, what was possible for me. But the moment I truly started living from consciousness as the only reality, that bank account became nothing more than a temporary reflection. It lost its status. It lost its power over me. And here's what's beautiful and honestly a little eerie. The moment something loses power over you internally, it starts to change externally. Because you're no longer feeding it with your attention, your emotion, your fear, your worship. Second, it makes living in the end natural instead of feeling like pretending. So many people tell me living in the end feels fake. I feel like I'm lying to myself. And of course it feels fake if you still believe the 3D is the primary reality. Because you're trying to feel wealthy while looking at your empty bank account. You're trying to feel loved while looking at your empty bed. And there's this constant tug of war between what you're seeing and what you're imagining. But when you truly assume consciousness is the only reality, living in the end isn't fake at all. In fact, it's the only thing that's actually real. The empty bank account is the lie. The state of I am abundant is the truth. Third, it puts you completely back in power. When you assume consciousness is the only reality, you realize that nothing outside of you has any power over your experience. Nothing. Not your past, not your childhood, not your ex, not the economy, not your boss, not your current diagnosis, not your age, nothing. All of those things are just expressions of consciousness. They are not causes, they are effects. They are the movie, not the projector. After I had that realization, I started this super simple practice every morning that rewired my entire relationship with the world. I would sit with my coffee, and instead of jumping straight into affirmations, I would just remind myself, sometimes out loud, consciousness is the only reality. Everything I'll experience today is just my consciousness pushed out. My bank account is consciousness, my relationships are consciousness, my health is consciousness, the entire world is just my inner state externalized. And then I'd ask myself one question that you can start asking yourself from today. What state of consciousness do I want to be in today? And I would choose abundance. But here's the key. Not because I was trying to manifest money and then check if it worked, but because I wanted to dwell in the state of abundance for its own sake. Because that state is the reality. The money is just the shadow it casts. Within about 2 weeks of doing this, I noticed something insane. My thoughts about money had changed on autopilot. I wasn't forcing positive thoughts. I just wasn't worried anymore. I knew my state of consciousness was the only thing creating my reality, and I was in the state of abundance. So the 3D had no choice but to eventually conform. And sure enough, within a month, I got an unexpected opportunity that doubled my income. But listen closely, that was almost like a side effect. It wasn't I did this to get that. It was I became this, so that had to show up. Now, this is where most people trip up. They hear consciousness is the only reality, and they go, okay, cool, I believe that. But believing it in your head and actually assuming it as the ground you stand on are two completely different worlds. So how do you make this assumption real for you? Here's the exact process that worked for me. Step 1, start observing your 3D world as evidence of consciousness, not as reality. For 1 week, I made it my job to look at everything in my life and ask, what state of consciousness created this? My messy apartment? That came from a state of overwhelm and lack of self-worth. My strained relationship with my sister? That came from a state of feeling unheard and defensive. My financial struggle? That came from a state of lack and fear. And this wasn't about beating myself up. It was actually the opposite. It was like, oh, this isn't random. This isn't punishment. This is cause and effect. This is my consciousness doing what it does. If my consciousness created all of this, then my consciousness can create something completely different. Step 2, start living from the assumption, not towards it. Most people live as if the 3D is real, and consciousness is something they hope will eventually prove itself. So they think, once I manifest the money, then I'll really believe consciousness creates reality. That's totally backwards. You don't manifest to prove consciousness works. You assume consciousness is the only reality, and manifestation becomes a non-issue. When you live from this assumption, you stop needing the 3D to confirm anything. You stop checking. You stop looking for signs to see if it's working. You stop asking, where is it? Because you genuinely know that what you're conscious of is your reality now, and the 3D is just the delayed mirror. Step 3, use revision to rewire your relationship with the past. One of the biggest blocks to fully assuming consciousness is the only reality is this heavy, unquestioned belief in the past is something solid and unchangeable. I started revising my day every night. If I'd had a day where I'd felt stressed and overwhelmed, instead of falling asleep in that state, I'd imagine the day as if I had moved through it from calm, power, and confidence. What I was really doing was training my consciousness to see that even the past is malleable. That what already happened is just a story in consciousness now, and stories can shift. Step 4, practice pure I am awareness throughout your day. This is the practice that really sealed everything for me. Multiple times a day, I would just pause and feel I am. Not I am rich or I am loved at first, just I exist. I am aware. I am. In that moment, I wasn't a person with problems. I wasn't my bank balance. I wasn't my relationship status. I was just pure awareness. And from that place, I could then choose calmly, I am abundant. I am loved. I am healthy. Not as affirmations I was desperately repeating, but as choices about what I wanted to be conscious of now. Here's what I want you to really walk away with from this video. You don't have a manifestation problem. You don't have a my SP is stubborn problem. You don't have a maybe I'm blocked problem. You have an assumption problem. As long as you secretly assume the 3D is more real than your consciousness, you will always feel like you're fighting, like you're trying to push a boulder uphill with your mind. The moment you truly assume that consciousness is the only reality, not as a nice belief, but as the fundamental truth of your existence, everything flips. Your circumstances lose their power over you. Your past stops dictating who you can be. Your future stops being this scary unknown and becomes something you're literally selecting right now, moment by moment, in consciousness. This is the one assumption that changes everything. Because once you really take it on, you discover you're not a limited human begging a universe outside of you. You are consciousness itself, the operant power creating your experience every second. And from that realization, honestly, anything is possible. So here's my challenge to you. Live as if consciousness is the only reality for 1 week, just 7 days. Every morning, remind yourself of this truth. Throughout your day, catch yourself whenever you make a circumstance realer than your state and gently pull your power back. Every evening, revise your day from the state you actually want to live in. Do it fully, not half-heartedly, and watch what happens. Notice the little shifts, the synchronicities, the emotional changes, even if the 3D doesn't flip overnight. Those are your first signs that your root assumption is changing. If this video resonated with you, if something in you went, oh my God, this is what I've been missing, drop a comment below and tell me honestly, what was the one line or the one story that hit you the hardest? The one that made you see your life differently? I read every single comment and I love seeing how this lands for people. And if you want more content like this, practical Neville Goddard teachings that you can actually apply in your life, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'll see you in the next video.